to you by Crystal Blue Sound Studios.
Also, Dynamics Productions.
This is Studio Life, and we are just that, in the studio. Specifically, Crystal Blue Sound Studios near Tampa, Florida, and with the owner, Dominic Pages. Nick, thank you for this podcast. Let's tell the listeners who Nick Pages is. People hear owner, and they think hands-off, out of sight, out of mind. You're not only hands-on, you've been in a huge number of roles musically, including, of course, as a performer. And that came to be as a result of a certain television show in 1964 with your sister, one of the countless viewers. What happened next?
Well, I was about 5 years old, and I was watching the Ed Sullivan Show on the black and white console. And as you guys know, the Beatles performed, and I don't know, it just grabbed me and has never let me go since.
So you got bit by the bug that was the Beatles. Pardon the pun, I guess. So then why not just sit still and focus on being the next John, Paul, George, or Ringo?
Well, I've already been through that stage. I emulated playing with the Beatles. I was Ringo for the longest time. My uncle bought me a set of drums when I was about 8 years old. And, well, I proceeded to keep the whole neighborhood awake at night playing on them, and just taught myself to tap along with Beatle records. And that's where I began my musical career at about 8 years old.
You were not able to resist seeking more creative knowledge, though, right? You were doing some performing, and you decided that you wanted to go and find out about the process of writing songs, getting them recorded. That you knew there was more than just being John, Paul, George, or Ringo, the performer. Yes?
Yes, absolutely. I decided to start playing in bands when I was about 13 years old, and I started as a drummer. We could never find a bass player, so I became a bass player. And then we could never find a drummer, so I went back to drumming, and of course all the while I was picking my sister's guitar up and playing with it. So I learned from an early age to be a musician, and eventually I decided that that was my calling, and I wanted to try to do it for a living. And luckily then, when I started to perform, I had some foresight to know that I couldn't do it forever. In the way I was doing it was just playing clubs and stuff locally. So I decided to teach myself the recording industry.
This is Studio Life. I'm Bruce Wozniak from Now Hear This. I invite you to visit www.now-hear-this.net. And I'm talking to Nick Pages from Crystal Blue Sound Studios near Tampa, Florida. Crystal Blue is on the internet at www.cbpro.net. Nick, you got yourself off and running, both playing music as well as recording it. Eventually, you, of course, had to have a band to collaborate on a CD with. What was that whole process like, especially as it differs from an artist who today gets to walk into Crystal Blue Sound Studios and just record?
That's a great question, but as funny as it may be, when you own a recording studio and recording other projects, you never seem to have time to work on your own stuff. So the making of my first CD, Decades, was pretty much a decade, it seems like, of planning and what have you. And finally, I just decided I needed to do it. And it took about a year and a half. And I basically wrote all the songs and basically invited some different people to come play on it and what have you. And that's how we were able to achieve that back in 2002.
You say that with a very relaxed, calm demeanor some X number of years later. But certainly at the time, people should know that it's not that easy. Here you were writing songs, you were playing an instrument, you were doing vocals, you were doing the recording, trying to manage egos, schedules. There was a whole lot to it.
There really was. I've learned a lot from then till now, and I understand now that it's a process. And you know, if there's one thing I could do over, I'd probably wear less hats, and that's what I'm in the process of trying to do now. But in the same breath, I'm glad that I wore all those hats because I understand all the jobs now. and I can always fill in to either or of the jobs that are required to do a recording. So I also learned in the last few years how important it is to have an easygoing demeanor and not to get caught up in some of the challenges that are presented in the studio. So we try to do now is just basically take a deep breath and basically deal with the issues as they come. It's all about making musicians comfortable in a recording studio. They're normally used to playing live in clubs and running off of audiences' adrenaline. But in a recording studio, it has a tendency to be sterile and intimidating. But through the years, I've learned that it doesn't have to be, there's really nothing that serious about it. I mean, you really just have to kind of go with the flow. I'm big on the vision work. You vision what you want, you hear it in your head, and then you basically go through the process of trying to achieve it. And either you will exceed those expectations or you won't quite make it to them. So that's the nature of the beast.
People who will listen to this podcast will relate to some, all, or somewhere in between. Most people probably have the vision of, again, we'll keep using the Beatles as an example, of being the next big thing. You got your band's CD out there. You had a release party for it. I know at one point you were on TV playing with the band. All seemed well. For you, there are all these hats to be worn, though. What happens that takes someone in that position that it sounded like things were pretty comfortable to where you still yearn for more in terms of diversity? You weren't content just being the artist.
Well, I think most artists are never content. They're always looking for other things. I mean, I haven't met, at least the talented ones, are always looking for something else. It's just the stimuli that's required by artistic personalities. So I guess I'm no different than anybody else, but I just need a lot of different stimuli to keep me interested and keep me motivated and keep the drive going. And regardless of who I'm working with, regardless of the level, I try to do that. I try to take it to a next level.
Well, you've certainly done that, because as we sit here today, you're still playing and singing, but moreover, Crystal Blue Sound Studios is offering a full menu of services. Talk about the diversity here.
We're getting more diverse by the moment here with our first podcast, but we do everything, basically from full productions to mobile recording, biographies, education, artist management, artist booking. It's just a large palette of things that we offer, because I think I've always had a dream of having an all-inclusive place where you just go and you can do everything. But I wasn't interested in doing that in a commercial environment, because it would have to become too much of a businessman to do that. Here I can do just enough of the businessman stuff and do what I love to do, which is create music and play it.